All right, welcome to the BamaInsider.com podcast from Hoover, Alabama. SEC Media Day 1 gets underway. Here with Tony Tsoukalas. What's going on, Tony?
Hey, it's been a busy day.
Busy day for sure, as 3 coaches kicked off SEC Media Day. We heard from LSU, we heard from Arkansas, and we heard from Tennessee. We're going to fill you in on the BamaInsider.com podcast. Wherever you're listening from, thank you for joining us on the Bama Insider SEC Media Day podcast. And we got a busy week for you, so be sure and join us all week long for tons of content on BamaInsider.com. Tony Tsoukalas kicking out some great content pieces. I'm bringing it to you on the media front. Together, we all tie it together on BamaInsider.com. We'll start with LSU head coach Ed Orgeron and kind of what he said about Alabama in terms of closing the gap. What were your thoughts, Tony, on what Orgeron had to say today?
Yeah, I think he feels that they're not that far behind. When he talked about stopping Alabama, he said it starts up with protecting the quarterback. And Danny Etling was sacked, I think, 5 times last season by Alabama. So it's going to be big for that offensive line to be able to protect for Danny Etling in this year's game. Of course, Orgeron said that he wasn't 100% sure that Etling was going to start, but he said if the season started right now, it would be Etling, and so that seems to be the guy. And he'll need some time to make some throws and improve on a passing game that Alabama's been able to take advantage of the last 2 years.
Let's listen to that clip right now of Ed Orgeron talking about Alabama and closing the gap on the Crimson Tide.
How big is the gap right now in your mind between Alabama and LSU, and how can you close it?
Obviously, they've done a great job. Coach Saban's done a great job. He did a great job at LSU. Last year was a very tight game. It was 0-0 going into the third quarter. Their quarterback made 2 plays. We didn't. So I don't know that it's that big of a gap. I think that we need to play out football. Obviously, there's a lot of people on our schedule that are very, very good football teams, so we can't just point to Alabama, but they're a benchmark. I understand that the head coach at LSU must beat Alabama. I think that the way to beat Alabama is to recruit on their level. They're recruiting at a very high level now. They do a great job of evaluation and coach very well and get your team ready to play. And again, last year we wasn't that far off.
LSU has not beaten Alabama since the 2011 season. Last year, Alabama beat LSU 10-0. You wrote a great article today, which you can read on BamaInsider.com, on LSU running back Darius Geis. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, it's Geis.
And he was saying that Alabama's defense was scared of LSU. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, last year, following the game against Alabama, they did lose. LSU lost 10-0, but they had a big game against Arkansas the following week, in which Geis then said that he felt Alabama was scared of LSU's running attack, and that's why they stacked the box. And so, Geis only gained 8 yards on 2 carries during that game, and then they limited LSU to, maybe 37 yards on the ground that game as well. And so it's kind of odd to hear that, Alabama would be scared of stopping the run, or scared of LSU's rushing attack, rather. But Geis doubled down on that statement today, saying that, I said what I said and I still mean it. So he obviously still feels that Alabama is scared of LSU's rushing attack, which I feel like is kind of interesting considering how well they've stopped it the last 2 years.
We're talking with Tony Tsoukalas. My name is Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com, coming to you from Hoover, Alabama. This is SEC Media Days, and we're bringing you tons of content which you can view on BamaInsider.com. Again, thanks for listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. We'll have a podcast hopefully every single day from Hoover, Alabama, and you can download right here on iTunes or Google Play, as well as subscribe to any of our future or past podcasts. LSU wide receiver DJ Clark also chimed in on what's made Alabama so tough to beat, and here's what he had to say.
Alabama and LSU recruit the same, for the most part, the same players. They compete in the recruiting war if they number 1, we're number 2. So the players are there, the talent is there. It's just the focus and the work ethic, and just I feel like we have that this year, so which makes the game even more exciting. The game last year was 10-0, and for Bama being respected as like the best team in the country, that's a great game. So I really think he was right that the talent level. I really honestly think the talent level is even. Honestly, it's just how you execute.
Why has it been such a tough go scoring touchdowns against Alabama the last 2 games?
Great team. You know, they're coached great. The most fundamentally sound team that I've ever faced. And that D line, you know, you really have to be prepared because you can't really run the ball as well as, I mean, we run the ball against everybody, and then we play them, and you have to you don't want to get away from your offense, but you have to, you know, do something else, and it's really difficult. So, I mean, you got to tip your hat off to those guys.
Chopping it up with Tony Tsoukalas on the BamaInsider.com podcast. We also heard from Arkansas quarterback Austin Allen, who threw for over 400 yards, surprisingly, against Alabama last year as Alabama beat Arkansas 49-30. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, he was one of only 3 quarterbacks to do that, to throw 400 yards against Alabama. You got to remember, too, this is one of the Alabama defenses that a lot of people were talking about being the best Alabama defense of all time. So that's no small feat. While he did throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, he also threw 3 interceptions. So basically what he was talking about is, yeah, there's some moments in that game that he wishes he could have had back. You know, that's a game where Arkansas fell behind early, and they kind of forced him into passing. And for a while there, he really frustrated Alabama's secondary. I remember after the game, you saw Marlon Humphrey, a first-round pick, you know, kind of very sullen outside of the locker room, really upset at the fact that, you know, Alabama gave up those kind of yards. And if Allen's able to improve on that performance and maybe cut out some of those mistakes, he could really be a dangerous weapon, and it might pose a threat for Alabama next season.
I thought this was an interesting soundbite. Today, offensive lineman from Arkansas, Frank Ragnow, said that Alabama is genetically freakish up front on the defensive side of the ball.
Right. I mean, yeah, they've got a lot of athletes, and Allen will know that too. I mean, he was sacked 7 times during that game, and a lot of those interceptions might have been caused for him having to deal with that constant pressure from Alabama's front. They're hard to block, and they were incredibly hard to block in that game. So that's another thing Alabama will have to do in order to stop Allen this year, is to recreate that pass rush.
We actually have that clip of Ragnow speaking on Alabama. Here it is right here.
Well, like everybody knows, they've got kind of like cookie cutters for the NFL, and they're always also talented and genetically freaky. But one thing that I would say, bravo to their coaches. They're all so technically sound and so smart, so that's one thing that's really impressive about them.
Alabama and Arkansas will meet October 14th at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama already a big favorite in that one. To close the day out, Tennessee coach Butch Jones talked about the rivalry game with Alabama.
Yeah, he was asked if it's a popular question now, should Tennessee have to play Alabama every year? They're an SEC East school. Of course, they have a long historical rivalry with Alabama, but Alabama's a top team, and no other SEC school has to play Alabama every single year, and it's really hard to establish, you know, a winning season or any kind of playoff hopes when you have to play that number 1 team every year. So it's been a popular topic in Knoxville of, you know, maybe Tennessee shouldn't play Alabama every year. But it didn't seem like Jones or any of the Tennessee players were really going that route. They just talked about the importance of the rivalry with Alabama, and I think we talked to a bunch of the players as well. They seem to care about that Alabama game, and not only care about it, but also want to play in it every year.
We actually have a clip from Butch Jones as well as Emmanuel Mosley. Here's that clip right now.
In terms of Alabama, obviously that's a great rivalry. That game means so many things to so many people. So again, we take that game very seriously, and have a lot of respect for what Coach Saban has built at Alabama and what they've done. But it's also a great rivalry game. And so that game means a lot to us.
We definitely circle it, you know. We didn't come out with the win. That's definitely going to stick with us. Our main goal is to win every game and win every time we play Alabama. So that's definitely with us. And this go around, we'll play Alabama. That'd be a good game.
It seemed like, you had a great game tackling, but it seemed like there were some tackling issues. Scarborough got loose down the side a couple times. Jalen, same thing. What is it about tackling some of their players that is difficult?
They have good players that can make you miss. Like I said, we had a couple of tackles that we missed that hurt us, that we would get corrected for this year.
Well, thanks for joining us on the BamaInsider.com podcast. We won't keep you too long today. We should have an action-packed Tuesday, July 11th, as Georgia's Kirby Smart, along with Florida's Jim McElwain, will be at SEC Media Day. Remember, both of them coached under Nick Saban.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of familiar storylines with this one, of course. Kirby Smart coached on defense just 2 seasons ago. There's the storylines too with Murray Smith transferring from the program. You've got McElwain, who has played Alabama in the last 2 SEC championship games. There's a lot of interesting storylines between both coaches in Alabama. It'll be really interesting to kind of talk about that.
From Hoover, Alabama, this is the BamaInsider.com podcast. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Tony Tsoukalas. All of our coverage back at BamaInsider.com. And thanks for listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast.